Hi everyone, thanks for watching. In this video, we're going to answer the question, what is a chemical reaction? And before we get to that, we have to talk a little bit about this word changes, because in the chemical world, there's actually three general ways that matter can change. Those ways are physical change, chemical change, and nuclear change. A physical change you've learned about before. There's things like cutting, bending, tearing. Here's a log being chopped. It's a log before it gets chopped, and it's a log after it gets chopped. Another example could be water boiling. The water starts as a liquid and it changes to a gas, but it's water in both scenarios. Even something like dissolving salt in water, before this happens, you have salt and water, and after the change happens, you still have salt and water. The key with all these examples and any physical change is that you don't really ever make any new substances. Now let's jump over to the other end of the spectrum with some nuclear changes. This is things like maybe atomic explosions, or on a smaller scale, what happens inside of nuclear reactors. In these types of changes, you've got entirely new atoms being formed. A common reaction that takes place in nuclear reactors is uranium-235 that splits into barium and krypton. So then that of course just leaves chemical changes as somewhere in the middle between these two extremes. A common example of a chemical change is a match burning or lighting on fire, anything burning really. You can see this equation represents the change. We've got phosphorus, potassium, chlorine, and oxygen before the change, phosphorus, potassium, chlorine, and oxygen after the change. So different than nuclear changes, we have the exact same atoms before and after, but they are definitely changing forms. At the beginning there was KClO3, and then after there's KCl. So we are getting new substances. Another common example is cookies baking. One of the reactions that takes place here is sodium bicarbonate with sodium, hydrogen, carbon, and oxygen. After the change, we still have sodium, hydrogen, carbon, and oxygen, but those atoms are definitely rearranging and changing form. So with chemical changes, you are getting new substances being produced, but you're not getting any new atoms being produced. One final note here is that this word chemical change, it means the same thing as the title of this video series, chemical reactions. So now we've got a good definition for chemical reactions. Really, they're just chemical changes or changes in matter where new substances are produced. In this video though, we're going to see if we can go a little bit deeper and really explore what's going on for chemical reactions. To do that, we're going to use an example of a chemical reaction between magnesium and HCl, or hydrochloric acid. When these substances, or any substances, chemically react, there's a very specific series of steps that take place. The first step in any chemical reaction is these reactants are held together with bonds. Here the H and the Cl are clearly attached to each other. If we're going to make new substances, those bonds have to be broken. We've got to separate all the atoms. In this case, hydrogen and chlorine are both nonmetals, so they were attached to each other with covalent bonds that we had to break. Once those bonds are broken, we can go to our next step, which is the atoms are now free to be rearranged. In this example, the chlorine atoms are going to change positions and instead attach to the magnesium. My two hydrogen atoms are going to change positions and attach to each other. This also leads into the third step, which says that new bonds are formed. Now that the chlorines are stuck to the magnesium, metals are attaching to nonmetals, so these are ionic bonds being formed, and a new covalent bond between the two hydrogen atoms. Now that I see what my products or my new substances are going to be, we can put the two phases of this kind of side by side. Here's where we started with an Mg and two HCl's. The chemical reaction took place with those three steps, and here's the new substances that I ended with. This just highlights really nicely the fourth and final phase of a chemical reaction, the fact that new substances have been created that did not exist before. And that wraps up this video on chemical reactions. Here's a brief summary.